Good afternoon, delegates, and welcome to today's mentorship session. Today's event is tagged An Afternoon with Chief Anthony Idigbe, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. It's the first group mentorship event by the Career Development Center of the Institute of Continuing Legal Education of the Nigerian Bar Association. We are grateful to Chief Anthony Idigbe for taking the first shot at this. And as at the last count, we had about 1,000 people already registered for this event. I'm hoping that everybody shows up for it, and I'm sure you will find the event very illuminating. I have the president of the Nigerian Bar Association has told me that he'll be joining very shortly because he's very keen on being mentored by Chief Idigbe himself. Once he's finished from a meeting, he will join, and hopefully he will have a few words to say during the session. My name is Tobenna Erojikwe, and I'll be moderating today. I'm the chairman of the governing board of the Institute of Continuing Legal Education. Now, Chief Anthony Idigbe will be taking us on a 2-hour session today. The first part of it will last for about 45 minutes to 1 hour. And then he'll be focusing on the survey questions and responses that we received. And he will sort of tailor the session to respond to those questions. After that, there'll be a fireside chat between him and Mary Ede. And the fireside chat will be based on questions also that come in as the sessions proceeds. So we expect it to be a very interactive session. I hope that we all enjoy the session and that we find it extremely illuminating. Of course, Chief Anthony Idigbe does not need introduction. He is the senior partner of Punuka, and also one of Nigeria's leading and most distinguished senior advocates. Sir, please, I would yield the floor to you to start. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tobenna. It's a great pleasure to be here today. It is my hope that we would have a very interactive session today. I am hoping that you'll be happy with the outcome of the proceedings today. I just want to thank the NBA for this opportunity, particularly for putting this together. I am very passionate about mentorship. I think that you are not a successful leader unless you are able to train other leaders. And so I like to have the opportunity to share my experience and the knowledge which I have gotten, in the hope that that will create the next generation of leaders. In terms of how we intend to proceed today, we first of all, let me just talk a little about Punuka. Punuka Attorneys and Solicitors, as you know, is a law firm that is based in Nigeria. It has 3 offices in Nigeria. We have 5 partners. We are part of a global network called LAW. We operate in 12 sectors and have 16 practice areas. Altogether, we have about 40 lawyers, and with our support staff, we are over 65, 70 with the support staff. Let me just again thank the chair of the Continuing Education Institute of the NBA, Tobenna, the president of the NBA, Mr. Agbata, the president of the chairman of the section of business law, Jemide Ayoli, and all those who have organized this. I would just say that when I was told to speak about mentorship and that there will be so many people that will be interested, I I was like, how do I make sure that value is given in return? And so I thought that perhaps the best way to do it is to make it as interactive as possible and to know what the need is of those that I will be speaking with. And so I insisted that the only way I'll be able to do this program is to do a survey. Since I cannot be face to face with each person, that we should take advantage of technology to achieve exactly the same outcome as though we were face to face with each other. I will be talking a little bit later about e-mentoring. But that is essentially how I saw this, that this was an e-mentoring session. And so the registration for this webinar had a survey that people had to fill. Now, as the chairman of the institute said, as at now, the survey, the response has been over 1,000 people, but we had to have a cutoff time in order to be able to prepare the data for you. And at the time we did the cutoff, there were 430 respondents, and 65% of them were below the age of 40. Although I must say that from the design, there was an assumption that those over 50 would not participate because I went there myself to fill the form, which is again part of my management strategy. I always make sure I do things myself. So I went there and I saw that the age limit was 50. And so there was a presumption that those after 50 would not be interested in this webinar. But in any event, 65% were below the age of 40 years, and 90% of the respondents are in legal practice. 10% of them are in-house lawyers. And the respondents, showed interest in various areas of law. I must tell you that in terms of the areas of law, it ranged from some are interested in extended reality technology and law, so technology and law, some want criminal defense, some taxation law, others intellectual property, some family law, some were interested in corporate practice, some wanted dispute resolution, some international trade, some shipping and maritime law, some are interested in human rights law, corporate finance, company secretarial, arbitration, fintech, entertainment law, real estate law, probate and wealth management, property law, energy law and oil and gas, labor law and industrial relations. And one person said he was interested in boutique practice. He didn't tell us what he meant by boutique or she meant by boutique practice. One spoke about constitutional law, which is very interesting, constitutional law. And then there were others who wanted insolvency, restructuring, and business rescue. So it was really quite a wide range, but I will eventually discuss the issue as to how wide is it really, and what is the direction that legal services are going, and are these people actually anticipating the areas that legal services are going in terms of the future, and in terms of how they are preparing and being able to anticipate it. So in terms of the age, again looking at the data, and we're trying to do the data analysis, 30% of the respondents said they are in partnership. 24% say they work alone. 35% say that they work with 1 to 5 lawyers, and 5% work with 6 to 10 lawyers, and 6% work with over 10 lawyers. I will talk about how we interpret this data. While 44% say they are self-employed, and 49% are employed. Now, of the self-employed people, 39% say that they employ 1 to 5 lawyers. Note this, 1 to 5 lawyers. And 4% say that they employ 6 to 10 lawyers. And 19% work alone. And then only 3% employ more than 10 lawyers. Now, the statistics from the Supreme Court shows that as at August 2019, there were 190,000 lawyers in Nigeria, and that this increased 32% from 2015 when there was about 160,000. We don't have the current figures of the current registration as at today in Nigeria, so I'm using the data that is available. However, we do have the current data that for this year, 57,000 people paid their practicing fee. So we want to assume that those who pay their practicing fee are those who are practicing law in Nigeria. And that shows that if you look at the sample of 430 respondents, that's a very good sample to tell you, to reflect the population of the practicing lawyers. So I think we were very good to have gotten a very good sample size, and that what this data is saying here reflects the position in Nigeria. You know, if you take, like in America, if they wanted to do a survey, most of the surveys you hear, they would do only about 2,000 people to reflect the position with respect to a population of 350 million. So if we got respondents of 430 for a population of practicing lawyers of 57,000, I think it's a very good sample size, and this reflects what we are. And let's now interpret it, what we are. It is telling us essentially that, you know, we are very, all our law firms are very small. There's no big law firm, no seriously big law firm in Nigeria. If you look at the data, the majority of the people are self-employed. They work in little firms that employ 1 to 5 lawyers. Only 3% work in a firm that has over 10 lawyers. You know, essentially, you can say it that our law firms are not strong. We don't have the critical mass to be able to draw resources, you know, make the right investments, etc. A good percentage are self-employed people who are working alone. So that's what the data is telling me, and I have more graphic presentation of the data, which I will run through very quickly. But the key feedback, there was another question there that said, what would you like me to talk about? What would you like me to talk about? And it looks as if the data, you know, is also saying the same thing. If you look at the data is saying exactly the same thing that the feedback gave. Said they would like me to talk about how to build a law career. They would like me to talk about how they would choose an area of specialization. They would like me to talk about how they will build a firm. And they would like me to talk about how they can retain their clientele. I mean, clearly, the problem has been identified very clearly, not by me. Everything I'm saying is the data speaking, the data that we analyzed, the data, you know, from those who responded, from the people who are present today. This is what they would like me to talk about. But when you look at the data in terms of the constitution, they are right. It's all small firms. They need to build a law career, proper law career. They need to choose areas of specialization. They need to build firms, big firms. We need to build big firms. Although I told you about Punuka, right? But that's not my ambition. My ambition is not to have a law firm that employs less than 100 people, you know, about 40 lawyers and 5 partners. I want to have 200 partners. I want to have 2,000 lawyers. If other countries have it, why can't I have it? Right? So that's the aim, that's the ambition. And why shouldn't other people be able to set up strong firms? The question is, can you set it up if you are working alone? You have a limit to your capacity, what you can do. That's why they say that what is called synergy. 1 + 1 is equals to 2 in mathematics. But in synergy, 1 plus 1 is equals to 5. That when two people combine, they will create more synergy, and therefore they will go above the mathematical combination. So if you are alone, you can only be 1. But if you are 2, you can create 5, not 2. So that is how we would look at it. So let me just run through some of the data. You can see it, just what I have already said, just running through the data. So you will see it, the age range. I have told you 65% are below 40 years. The location of the respondents, the majority are in Lagos, as you can see, followed by Abuja, Kaduna, Enugu. So this is the distribution. It's also telling you the distribution of practice, sort of where you have more active practice as well, through the interest which is shown in this. And then you look at the age range. As I've already given you the analysis, that if you combine it all together, the majority are less than 40. But I've given you this data as well, in terms of about the percentages that are self-employed and employed. You can see here the working structure of those that are employed. If you look at it, if you dig deep into this data, what is telling me, like you see that 89 that didn't respond, it means they say that they're employed, but maybe they are not really employed. They are on the fence. They are probably looking for work. They are not settled, something like that. So that's how I interpret this data. I told you about the working structure, which shows that they are all small firms. There's nobody in anything that is big here. So definitely these are people who need and require guidance, to grow their firms, to grow themselves, to see how they can fit themselves into big structures, how they can maintain the structure. And I'll talk about all those things and how they should not kill the structure, etc. Having looked at the data that came from us today, having done that analysis, I would like to take some time to discuss what the situation is in terms of legal services, give an overview of developments in legal services and law practice, and hope that from that analysis we will get inklings as to what we need to do to build a law career, what we need to do to choose an area of specialization, what we need to do to build a strong firm, and what we need to do to retain our clientele. So the first thing I want to say is that the only thing that is permanent in life is change. So legal services, like everything else, is always changing. Always. And I will tell you, it's always changing, because I have been in practice for 8 years. And when we do the fire chat, I may have the opportunity to tell you what my experience has been over that 38 years and what I saw with my 2 eyes and how I saw those changes occur. So the only thing that is permanent in life is change. So what you need to understand the drivers for that change, particularly for law practice. You need to know what is driving change in law practice. Because once you understand it, then we start going into the solution and where you come in terms of how you want to achieve your career goal, how you want to achieve your area of specialization, how you want to achieve building a strong firm, and how you want to retain your clientele. Now, the International Bar Association is aware of this problem. So they set up a task force in 2017, before the pandemic. The task force produced a report on the future of legal services, and they identified what was driving change in the legal services. And they are: one, changing demographics and values, and two, skills mismatch and legal education reform, and three, emergence of new forms of value creation, and lastly, globalization and shift of economic power. So let us take changing demographics. For instance, you find that their demographics is changing in different ways. One, you're having more minorities becoming lawyers. You are also having more women becoming lawyers, etc. What is important to them is changing. A lot of people no longer even want to be lawyers, particularly a lot of men don't necessarily want to be lawyers, and the value system around dispute resolution, and people look for other ways, of how they want to resolve their problems. Their values have changed. They want speed. Those sort of things are changing how you have to practice law. Skills mismatch. You check the traditional, what they taught you in law school, and you come out and you find out that all the things that make you successful are the things they did not teach you in law school. And the question is, what are the things they didn't teach you in law school? And what are the things you need to know after you come into practice that nobody taught you about? And so there's a skill mismatch. Eventually, when we do the fireside chat, I will talk about how I responded to skill mismatch when I began to realize there was a gap between the skills I had and the needs of my clients. And how did I respond to it, and what did I do? So then you talk about emergence of new forms of value creation. This cuts across, several issues. You talk about the application of technology. You talk about people just wanting different things, different from what a traditional lawyer would provide. You talk about, again, speed. People wanting to do things themselves. They don't want a lawyer. They want to be able to file their papers themselves. They want to be able to go to a website that would give them how to prepare their own statement of claim, and they file it or their defense, etc. We begin to say, okay, so even in that circumstance, does it mean a lawyer is no longer needed? And we'll discuss that. Does it mean that because people want to go to the website and then do their own statement, does it mean that a lawyer is no longer needed? We'll discuss that. Then you talk about the globalization and shift of economic power. You see the shift going, say from Europe to China, and you talk about even people becoming more empowered even in Africa and things like that. So this also means that, for instance, and I will talk about that, where you see law firms, say, from Africa playing bigger role, from China in international transactions that they were not playing before, So these things are shifting issues, So, of course, there's the legal technology development and innovation, etc., as a major issue. Then you have one of the drivers. So outside the issues that have been mentioned by the IBA, there are other drivers like regulatory gaps, and innovations. You would talk about, for instance, the WTO, protocol on free movement of legal services, that's tied to globalization. But you now talk about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which says that services can move a little bit easier around Africa. These are regulations, and they are creating gaps. And those gaps, probably creating opportunities, also creating challenge for some lawyers, So then you talk about panic, you talk about disaster, you talk about pandemic. So we are now in a current pandemic that has impact. During the fireside chat, I may talk about my own experience on how, we responded to some of these issues, whether it's disaster, pandemic, panic, and then, technology, and many of these drivers. Now, all these drivers, you can summarize into two issues. Two factors. One, the market-driven factors, and two, regulation-driven factors. So your legal practice is likely to be affected by one of those two. So it could be competition in the market, it could be the clients, it could be the courts, etc., or it could be regulation. They could pass a new law now saying that lawyers must do this or do that, and then that will change everything. Or new lawyers start coming in from abroad because we now signed the protocol on free movement of legal services, or because we signed the African Continental Free Trade agreement, and those will, and when they come, it will change the dynamics, and that will affect the practice of law. So those are the two major things. You need to understand these forces that are driving change in the profession. And so the question is, how do you then respond to these factors? Because once you can answer this question, how do you respond to change, to build a law career, and to specialize? If you answer this question, then you have in order to answer this question, you must recognize those forces of those drivers of change, and you would be able to then survive in spite of those drivers of change. So I suggest, before, and let me just, to close out the other issue, I always like to refer to Tyson, Mike Tyson, the boxer. They asked him, to talk about his boxing. And you know what he said? He said, when you want to go and box, you enter the ring to box with somebody else. And you have a plan on, this guy, I've studied his tape, I know how he boxes, he does this and that. He said, well, that your plan only exists until you receive a good punch on your face. When you get a good punch on your face, all the plan will disappear. You have to start again and plan properly, So, and that is what like a pandemic does to you, or disaster, etc. So you must always bear that in mind, that you can still have a plan, but something can come and hit you like an uppercut, and then you have to replan again to be able to survive. So the first thing is that you must be able to anticipate change. So we have said the only thing permanent in life is change. So you must be able to then now anticipate the change. One of the things I see, people resist change. They fail to recognize change when it's coming. Then it takes them away like a tsunami. So how do you anticipate change? You must be able to anticipate the client's need. And you must be able to anticipate costs. Because when you do, once you can manage costs, your profit will always be reasonable. You must anticipate that change can occur from the courts. And I will tell you, people say that our courts are the ones that are not technology driven. And that the courts we never adopt change. We never be the change will never come from courts. Well, some of you attended the first virtual hearing of the Supreme Court last week. So the Supreme Court is already driving the change. Supreme Court of Nigeria had virtual hearing last week. Some of you are aware of the legal mail project going on. One day they will have cut off and say, from today you must file all your papers into that platform. If you have not been preparing, you are out. It will take you, by the time you are, they say they have first mover advantage. By the time you are trying to go and learn how to do legal mail, how to file into the e-filing platform, other lawyers have moved ahead. And you may find that you have to close your practice and go and join maybe another group. You must be able to anticipate the competition, which is, you may say the other lawyers, what they are doing, what other law firms are doing, right? You must be able to anticipate them, know what they are doing, and try to cope. If you know how, if you watch Olympics, watch marathon. If you notice marathon, when they kick off the marathon, they run in groups. Have you noticed that The leaders want to stay together. They bunch together. They are running. They bunch together, running, right? Now, let's say somebody trips. If you trip from that group, you will find there will be a second group behind. You may join the second group. And if you notice, it is almost impossible to move from that second group to the first group of leaders, because you need that extra strength to strive to gap. If they're giving you 200 meters in a marathon, to cover that 200 meters, what you need, the energy you need to do it is more. It's better to bunch together, just be going with them in that first group. Then you can keep your extra energy. When you are getting towards the end, you burst out, and then you can be the number one. So you must anticipate your competition and bunch together and be moving, with them. But you know what is worse? You must anticipate the substitute, because the competition may not, the change may not come from your fellow competitors. It may come from accountants, fintech companies. These are not lawyers, but they may provide services for the client that will take out the need of lawyer. So you must anticipate them, what they are doing, and then then how do you now respond? You must now become the change yourself. You will be the change. So how do you become the change? Because you've anticipated where the client's needs are going, you've anticipated cost, you've anticipated what the courts are doing, you have anticipated the competition and the substitution, then you adapt yourself to the new skills which you need to survive in that anticipated future environment. So you plan it ahead. You don't wait when it occurs. You create new solutions. So because you know what the needs are, you should be the solution, not other people being the solution and you are responding to it. You become the solution, create the solution. So I will tell you, let me give you a good example. I recall Chief Ganefo Aime when we were practicing, and he used to come to court, and on many occasions he told me, you people in Ladna, because I remember one case I did with him, and the Supreme Court had taken a decision. It was a one-page decision. It was not reported in any law report. So I had this case against him, and then I brought the law report, the certified copy, and gave it to him in court and gave to the court. And we won the case on that. He stormed out of court screaming and shouting, say, you people, you Ladner, Chief Williams, you top law firms, this is what you guys are doing. Only you have the knowledge. We are going to democratize knowledge in legal practice in Nigeria. He told me. And what did he do? He started the law report. The Nigerian Weekly Law Report said that everything must be reported. Let the lawyer in Sokoto know it. Let the lawyer in Lagos know it. Let no lawyer have an advantage that because he works in a big law firm, he has this special knowledge. So that's the sort of thing about being the solution, creating the solution, right? Do not be a bystander. Don't be a bystander. You create the future through visioning and leadership. You create the future, and you focus on your strength. Focus on your strength. A lot of times people talk about their weaknesses. The next thing there are some people who always say, I'm from a poor home. I am from this. I am from that. I have a nephew that I sponsored through university, and one day he made this comment to me and said that he's from a poor home with respect to something he was supposed to do. And I got angry. And he said, why? I said, well, how can you be focusing on your weakness and not your strength? I said, do you know how many people who didn't have anybody to fund them through university? You have an uncle who paid your school fees. You never were hungry for one day, and you are calling yourself poor. You are calling yourself poor. He apologized. Said, because I didn't see you as poor, I know people who are really poor in Nigeria who didn't have anybody to give them scholarship, to pay their fees, blah, blah, blah. So you must know what your strength is. Many people think that they always focus on their weaknesses and not on their strength. So you focus on your strength. Everybody has strength. Everybody has it. All you need to do is examine it. I'll give the example of a client that I was doing a case for a long time ago, and he couldn't pay the debt, and he was always inviting me to come to his house, to come to his house. You know, he used to be in construction, so I went to his house, and he was telling me in his house that he couldn't pay the debt, and things were tough. But when I was coming down the street, I saw on both sides of the road, you know, the payloader, tractor, this, that, of his construction company that were all abandoned on the road, the entire road. He kept them like souvenir of when he used to be successful. And I told him, I said, but you know you can pay this money. He got angry. We started quarreling. How can I've come down to his house to see what he has, to know how tough things are for him, and I came here to insult him, to tell him that he cannot pay that money, that he can pay the money. I said, yes, you can pay the money, sir. Then he calmed down. I said, when I was coming, this is what I saw on the road. Have you valued those things? Anyway, to cut the story short, he went, we paid that money. He sold those things. He even had extra because I now negotiated discount for him, and he had money to restart his business. But he didn't know. He thought those were his weaknesses. He could not identify his own strength. So you get, now let's take those of you who say you want to get a job. You want to get a job. Have you ever written your personal statement? The way a company writes its business strategy, business plan, have you written your personal statement? Now say in your personal statement, this is my mission, this is my vision, these are my objectives, these are my targets, this is what I will do in the next 5 years, this is what I will do in the next 2 years, this is what I want to do in the next 10 years. And this is how I will change the world. This is how I will impact the world. Have you done it? Or you just sit down there and think that things just drop? The person who plans always succeeds. And if you don't plan, then you have already planned to fail. So you must sit down and write your personal statement. Like you know, the way you are, your personal statement, the way a company writes its business strategy. You must have your personal statement of what you want to be in the next 5 years, and then you update it after 5 years. You update it again after 5 years. I will during the fireside chat, I will tell you about my own and how I was using this personal statement to plan every 5 years. Do you know, in Canada, my experience here, you know, there's a technique they use. They have what is called informal interview. And it has become well established here, where you call up big people from big companies and you have informal interview. In other words, you are not calling them to ask for interview to get a job. You are just calling them to have an interview to just discuss with them on the fact that you are looking for a job. Is very standard here, and it's a very good means of mentorship. You know, you learn a lot when you go for the interview. Those interviews, you go there, then you say, well, I would like to, this is where I want to do this type of work and this, and they may make a few suggestions to you and say, this area is very difficult, but you know, maybe you keep trying, and maybe you should do this or do that, maybe you should want to consider this and that, and you go away. You didn't come there to ask for a job. You came there for informal interview. It's a mentorship method. And you may just be shocked that because you had that discussion with the person, the next day the person may know somewhere where there's an opening and may say, oh, there's this person that came for informal interview. Maybe that's the kind of person you guys need. Or you may get 1 or 2 tips that will help you when you now have a formal interview, because you have had a lot of informal interviews. You know what the market is looking for, and you have packaged and positioned yourself to it, and you get it. Then networking is critical. That's why they do a pupillage, formal interview, community engagement. How you engage in your church, how you engage in a hobby. Do you have any hobby? Or you think it's read book one? Book is important, but you need to network. You need to do other things. You need to be engaged with the community, particularly if you say you're a lawyer. The point of a lawyer is, you cannot be a lawyer outside the community. Why? Because the job of a lawyer is to represent. Your job as a lawyer is to represent. You represent other people from where? In the society. If the people don't know you, if you are not engaged with them, how will you represent them? How will they identify you as the person who will represent them? If you say you are the most brilliant lawyer, where did they see you do it? Now, because you are a lawyer, you are actually privileged, because you have been, from your training, prepared to represent people. That's your entire training, is to be able to represent other people, speak for them. That is why when you go for your first village meeting, they say, come and be the secretary. You have a natural ladder to leadership because you are a lawyer. They will always tell you, come and be our secretary, come and be our this, come and be our that. You write a good minute, they note it. You make a good contribution in your church meeting, in your village meeting, your mosque meeting, they note it. Oh, that guy's contribution, his analysis, you are using your legal skill. You have been trained for this. You have been prepared for this. But they need to experience it. If they don't experience it, how will they now be converted to clients? How will they be converted to clients? How do you think the client will jump from the sky and know you are a good lawyer and then give you a job? He has never had a contact with you. So you must see the society as the ocean. The ocean, the lake, right? But you have to now go into that lake and then put a pipe and then draw some of them into that pipe, and you put them in a pipe going into your law firm, where you open the tap, and then the water will be flowing from the lake into the tap in your office. So it doesn't fall from the sky. You have to take it from a lake. So it's through networking that you will be able to enter into the lake and then start drawing this water from that lake and moving it into your law firm. You must be engaged with the society at different levels. You have to have different circles within this society, different organizations, your old school, your village, your this, your that. I can't tell you the rest, Then you must develop expertise. People must know you for something you are good in. We'll talk about that again. So you talk about creating, a law firm now, that this within the I'm no longer talking about you as an individual now. We're talking about you as a law firm, where you must be able to set up and build the firm. You must create value. The firm must mean something to the client. It must solve problems. What is very interesting about law practice is that you solve the problem for the client. You not only get paid for it, they even give you blessings. They bless you, because the law problem is even more complex than medical problem. You do the operation, it's finished. Law problem is emotional, it's in the heart, at times it's financial, at times it's even physical if the person is detained, So law problem is multidimensional. and more complex than even medical problem. And you must bring a value to the table with respect to that. And then you must have marketing strategy. Market your law firm. Summary, I have told you, in order to market your law firm, you must create a pipeline. So just take it like it's crude oil or water or whatever, right? You must create a pipeline. You must first of all have the reserve. If it's pipeline, if it's crude oil, you know, the reserve is underground, right? So you apply technology, you put the rig, you go into the reserve. Then when you hit there, you use the pump, you pump the crude oil out, you put it in your pipeline, then you bring it out, then it goes through your pipeline till you sell it and collect the money. You can take the analogy of a lake, where you go put the pipe inside the lake, you put the water goes through, you open the tap in your law firm, you collect the money. Whatever it is, what is telling you is very simple. In order to create that pipeline, you cannot do it by being in your office. You go to where the clients go to, you do what the clients do, you speak the jargon that they speak, they get to see you as an expert. Then, when they have problem, they bring it to you to solve. You push them into the pipeline. You have different levels of relationship in that pipeline, and each of them you are developing from moving them from the lake to opening the tap in your office. And you must make sure that your pipeline never goes dry. So how do you make sure that the pipeline never goes dry? You have to be engaged in the lake or the reservoir. And that means you have to continually invest. Many people I see don't invest. They make money in law practice, they build houses. They make money in law practice, they marry wives. They make money in law practice, they take chieftaincy. They make money in law practice, they get confused. Some say, okay, now maybe I want to go into business, or maybe I want to go to the village and be making noise. Maybe I want to, so they get confused. They don't consistently invest in the practice, and they don't consistently invest in other people. And when you talk about the practice, there are two things. There's what you really need to do the practice, which is not too much, computers, these books, blah, 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 blah. But the main investment, in addition to that, is the human beings. As I told you, there's a limit to your own physical capacity, what you can do. So if you are successful in the lake and the water is a lot, and that pipeline, you have to expand the pipeline so it can take more. And when the water comes out in your office, you must do the job. If you can't do it, if it's too much for you and you didn't put people there to enough people well taken care of, what will happen? You will not be able to service. They will stop putting the water into your pipeline. They will take it to another pipeline. So you must understand, you have to invest in people. You have to invest in your structures. So, I just talk because people want to know how do you grow your law firm? How do you build a law firm? So I said, let me talk a little bit about that. First, you have to understand firm structure. And you probably have to understand firm value. People don't understand the value. I see experiences. People come, you are in a firm structure, you are collecting salary, you are collecting bonus, you are collecting this. Then the next day, the day you think you yourself is going to bring one job, that's the day you say you want to go and set up on your own. And you forget that when you go and set up on your own, you carry the overhead alone, you carry this alone, you carry that alone, In my law firm, I don't know how they pay salary. I'm not involved. I don't even know how they pay salary. All I know, I do my own side of the job. I get what is due to me, In fact, when we started partnership was when I never used to have my own personal account. It was only the firm account. There was no difference between the firm money and my personal money. But when we started partnership, we had to separate the firm account from my personal account. So I get my own money just like anybody else. It goes my own personal money. I don't know how they pay salary, how they do take care of all the expenses in the office. There are people who take care of that. So you have to understand, and it requires sacrifice because I give up a good portion of what I earn to the firm, in order for that structure to exist, to keep all these people together. But in the long term, it freed me, gave me the ability to do other things, and then the firm to grow. So you have to understand the structure of a firm. You have to understand partnership structure. And there are different types of structures of partnership. You can have one where you have a founder who is autocratic. You can have where it's just friends, and then every day they are joking, they started from school together and the rest. You can have the one that is family dominated and monarchical. You can have the one that is professional, everything, division of power, structured, blah, blah, blah. See, there can be different types of partnership, right? But you need to understand each one of them, and you need to know how, and I'll talk about it later, how do you grow within that firm. But the first thing, you have to understand how each specific firm is structured, and then you design your strategy on how to grow within that firm. So if you're an associate, the question is, what kind of associate are you? What kind of associate are you? Are you a minimalist? You have the associates who, they just come and do the minimum job. They don't make any sacrifice for anything. They push the fire from one person to the other. Then, are you skilled but just operational? When they give you a job, you do it very well, but you can't bring jobs. You don't think strategic. You can't grow the pot. You can't think of how to get repeat purchase when they give you opportunity. Or are you the one that when they give you opportunity for repeat purchase, you think it's your own? Are you, and you tie that to the issue of the value, the understanding how the partnership works and the structure of partnership, and there is a sacrifice, which, although you do make the sacrifice, you build a stronger structure. You build a stronger structure by making the sacrifice. You build a stronger structure, and that together you are stronger than each person individually. So, the way you now look at it, I will say, is that first of all, as an associate, you should understand the vision of the firm that if you find yourself. Then you should acquire the right skills in order to be able to be relevant at a strategic level in the firm. That's the secret. That's how you grow within a firm. You must you must understand the vision of that firm. You must acquire the right skills, and you must go to the strategic level, because that's when they will appreciate you the most. Let's put it that way. From the firm view, the firm has to have good management. And I talk about the Pareto principle, which says that, a solid management helps a firm to grow and to survive. And that it should be based on Pareto principle, which is, and I see a lot of lawyers make that mistake. Professor Pareto did his research based on inventories, but what he found is that there are, in every inventory, for it to be balanced, it has 80% of that inventory generates 20% of the income, and 20% of the inventory generates 80% of the income. And that you must understand this structure and make sure always you have a balance between the 20% that generates the 80% income and the 80% that generates the 20% income. Any misbalance between these two, the firm will run into trouble. So take it, the only example I usually give that shows it very clearly is you go to spare parts shop. The spare parts shop, they are selling tire, they are selling plug, all those ones are the 80% that bring only 20% profit. But when you enter inside the shop, there may be a glass cabinet where they lock something with key. Maybe one engine part, very expensive. That may be the 20% that gives them the 80% profit. You look at your law practice and ask yourself the question, which of my briefs or which of my clients are the 20% that give me the 80% income? And which ones are the 80% that give me the 20% income? Once you've identified them, now know that you should ensure that you don't lose any one of those two. The mistake many lawyers make is they now say, oh, how much am I getting from this 80%? Only 20%. They ignore it. And I saw it when I was growing as a lawyer. Those lawyers who said, When we were going to court and doing cases for 1,000 naira and 2,000 naira, they ran away, said no, they want to go and sell property to make 500,000. So they use 6 months to try and sell the property. They may succeed in selling one at the end of 6 months. But what happens is that when at the end of 6 months they sell that one property and make 500,000, they were owing their clerk money for the past 6 months because they didn't do anything except pursuing to sell that one property. They wanted to make big money. Maybe their secretary has even left. So by the time they now pay the backload of salary that they have to pay, they now owing their rent. They pay their rent, then there is no profit on that 500,000. But the lawyer who was doing 1,000 naira cases, 2,000 naira cases, and the rest have been paying his fees, have been paying his lawyers, have been paying the secretary, have been paying the clerk. So the same lawyer may still sell one property in 6 months and get 500,000, go straight to profit. Profit, investment. You just keep the money aside, you don't even look at it. That's the difference. So you must have the two. So you must expand your horizon. You must always expand your horizon. That is, new areas of practice, new areas. Remember, you anticipate the needs of the client, you respond to it. So how do you create an environment in your firm of mentorship? The first thing is the culture. You must create a culture, because that's the value that drives the people, keeps the people. It must be a strong culture, and it must be an adaptable culture. A culture today that you must create, because remember change, Okay, I started practice 38 years ago. I'm having people who are like my children, very soon I may have my children inside the law practice. There's a generational difference. Did you anticipate it? And what did you do about it? Are you empowering them, the young people? Are their voices being heard in your law firm? Who is driving innovation in your firm? Are you responding? For instance, we do have the concept of reverse mentoring. When I realized that, then I started using all this equipment. And I realized there are so many apps. There are this app, that app. So we decided to do reverse mentoring. So they gave me a mentor who is one of the kids in the office who teaches. If I have any issue of app and this, I'll go to my mentor to teach me how they use the app, how they use this, how they use that. It's called reverse mentoring. We do it. You must have flexibility in your office, in the this thing. I'm talking about the fact that your office should recognize differences, whether in sex, religion, age, marital status, and the rest. It's very important. Flexibility. For instance, in Punuka, they have women in many strategic positions. They have young people in many strategic positions. We even have a creche, because we realized when we set up the creche, it was to help the women, because they were getting married, they have problems with house help, this. They said, bring your house help and your children, bring them to the office. We have a creche. They take care of them. They will be there. Guess what? Then the men started bringing, when their wives, the wives of the men found out that there's a creche in Punuka, they say, carry the baby. The men started bringing the children to the creche as well. So remote working and technology, application of technology. We'll talk maybe later about what happened to us in Punuka with respect to that. But you need to be flexible about it. And then blended mentoring and e-mentoring. Blended mentoring means where you mentor using different strategies. Okay, it goes with e-mentoring. Where like for instance, you use like now we are working in a remote environment, so you use both email, face-to-face, Zoom calls, etc., to mentor a group, to help them, when they are dealing with a specific maybe legal challenge, or you want to grow them in a specific area of knowledge, you want to help them to build their career within a certain area, you use this blended method of using electronic means, using physical training, using just different means of communication. And you have to ensure that your people can get job satisfaction. If they don't have job satisfaction, they are going to leave you. They are going to leave you. So how do they get job satisfaction? You need to give them challenging jobs. You need to give them exciting jobs. You must have means of commendation. When they do well, you commend them. You must have a way of building your teams and give them collective responsibility, so they know if the team fails, all of them fails. If anybody fails in that team, the entire team fails. So they can try to cooperate together to make sure that they succeed. And you stop silo building within a firm, because that's one of the biggest problems. Everybody wants to shine and be the person, right? So making them to work as a team is very, very important. You must sell the vision of the firm. People have to understand what the vision of the firm is. What is it that makes this firm different from all the others? And what do you want to change in the world? Very important. And then sustainable compensation. Sustainable compensation. The idea that maybe you give them huge salary today, then tomorrow you can't pay. It doesn't work. It must be sustainable. You must carry them along. They understand it, right? So you do your best. That's all I will say. But make sustainable compensation. Well, and when I talk about sustainable compensation, it should be comprehensive. So things like pension and healthcare. I see many law firms don't pay pension. They don't pay healthcare for healthcare. They don't have a structure like grinder, finder, equity, bonus. That compensate at different levels, for different types of effort within the firm, whether as a finder, as a grinder, as an equity owner, or as bonus, And then you must have arrangements to give grants. That grants are where you just give them the money, and they don't. You give them, like, for instance, we have a system where they get a certain grant, is written off over 4 years. So if they stay in the firm for 4 years, they don't pay back. It's just a grant. It's for every year they stay, the money goes. So you say, okay, we'll give you a grant to assist you to buy a car, and we'll give you X amount of money, but it's written off every year for 4 years. If you stay for 4 years, the money is gone, right? If you don't stay for the 4 years, then you pay back the balance. So you must have competitive salary. You must, when people have problems, when people have problems, at times they look at it and say, look, I have this problem and I'm working in this place, and then I can't go to my brother, I can't go to my family. After I'm spending all my time here working, I have this problem. They come and say, oh, I have this problem, I need a loan of 2 million, and you walk the person away and say you can't give that advance. You would lose the person, let's put it that way. So you must also consider that at times you have to give advances and loans and etc. You must have, a credible recruitment process, and it should be non-partisan. There should be minimum standard of entry into your firm, like we do have. There should be a rigorous process. Part of the reason why people are proud, is because they know that there are many people we employ that they don't know me from Adams. They come through a very rigorous, independent process, and the next thing they find themselves in the firm, So, and they know that it's because of their own power, their own strength, So you must have career development plan, and there must be training and specialization within the firm, and you use all these blended methods to do the training, as I've said, internships, things like that. We do have relationships we've established with university law students, different groups, and these are like part of the other side, not the lake of the clients or the reservoir of the clients, but the lake of intakes of human capital coming into the firm. We build relationships with different universities and the rest, so that they are familiar with the law firm. So first of all, they will have a desire. When they tell them, where do you want to work? They will tell you want to work in this firm or that firm and that firm. So it doesn't just fall from the sky. You have to work on that, And then you have to identify high flyers, people with high potentials, and then you have to develop special programs for them, the middle level, you need to have stability with middle level staff, even if they are not high flyers, right? And you tie it to the remuneration system I was talking about. You use grants, there are so many methods you use to keep your middle level, because your middle level is also very important in growing your firm and sustaining it. Again, you have to be able to weed your brand antagonists. Honestly, there are people who come in, they are poison. From day one, they want to destroy everything. And it's their self-interest at times that is most important. And the reason you put procedure today, tomorrow they want to destroy it. They put another one, they want to destroy it. So you must be able to identify those brand antagonists and you weed them out from the system. So there are several methods you use: your performance appraisal, performance monitoring and review, self-appraisal. You must identify the fifth columnists, which are the most dangerous ones, and eliminate them from the system. So, and then in terms of an organization, you have to have a strategy for organizational renewal. As I told you, everything I've said lasts only about 5 years. After 5 years, you have to review it again. That's called the process of organizational renewal. You must do the same thing for yourself, your personal self. Remember, I told you you should have a personal statement. The firm should have a business plan, right? So I remember we started the business plan for digital transformation about 4 years before the pandemic hit last year. So we were in the middle of it when the pandemic hit. We'll discuss that later. So you must, in trying to do this renewal every 5 years, you have to look at what fresh skills do you need. Again, anticipate the client's need, anticipate what is happening in the market, anticipate what regulation is talking about. What fresh skills do you need? Where are you? What's your age? Because at times people are building, they forget there's age, there's illness, there's accident. These are all risk factors. So how did you plan to hedge against those things? That's where you talk about, do you continue to practice as yourself, or do you have partnerships? Do you become part of a bigger group? So that, the way it works is that today you may be high and you are the finder, the biggest finder, you are producing everything. But tomorrow, it may not be you. You may come down and another person will take over and continue. Performance will remain the same. So that is why you have to think about that. Then refreshing your brand. You need to always, again, as I said, have a new business plan every 5 years for you as an individual, your personal statement. And so I'd like to conclude my discussion by quoting Charles Darwin, who said that it is not the strongest or the most intelligent that survives, but the one most able to adapt to change. So it's not intelligence, really. The question is, are you able to anticipate change? And are you able to adapt to it? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chief. I'm sure you would all agree with me that this has been a very illuminating presentation. And I think this is really the time to properly introduce our speaker for today. I'm sure you guys have taken in a lot. So I'll just give a short citation of our mentor for today. Chief Anthony Idigbe is currently involved in doctoral research at Osgood Hall Law School, York University, Ontario, Canada, and was a Global Law Fellow at St. John's University, New York in 2019. His area of research interests is insolvency, with a focus on the interactions between non-state entities and multilateral state organizations in the establishment of global norms of cross-border insolvency. Anthony is uniquely positioned to pursue this project due to his expertise in cross-border insolvency and long-term membership of Insolvency International, INSOL, International Bar Association, and International Insolvency Institute. Bringing this knowledge together with rigorous research promises to produce meaningful work and can inform understanding not only of UNCITRAL's work on cross-border insolvency, but the development of global norms generally. He's licensed to practice law in Nigeria as well as Ontario, Canada, and holds degrees from the University of Ife, University of Lagos, Enugu State University of Science and Technology, Robert Gordon University, and the University of Toronto. He's the author of many published books and articles and a renowned resource person. I always find it interesting to listen to Chief, as he well knows, and he hasn't disappointed today. I'm grateful to all of you for continuing to be here with us. We have about 522 people listening today, and the numbers are counted. So I will now hand over to Mary, who would moderate the fire chat with Chief. Thank you very much. Mary, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Tobina. It's always very interesting listening to Chief Anthony Idigbe, SAN. His well of knowledge is really very deep. So it's a pleasure, sir. So, sir, for this section, we have a couple of questions for you, which some of the participants are already sending in their questions, and so we'll be looking at it during this section. So I'll start with our first question. So I would like to know, did success just happen for you? If not, what are the building blocks?
Thank you very much, Mary. It's a very difficult question. Let me put it that way. What I will say from my experience is that there is a portion of success that is luck. You know, there must be some level of serendipity for you. But there is a portion of it that is your effort. Okay, and the challenge is how to identify the factors that are under your control, and you work on those ones, and then now just pray that luck will come as well. So when I look back at my success, I think where the luck comes is probably when I was in class 4 in the secondary school, when they changed our school principal and they brought another principal to the school who threw me from class 4B, where I was doing science, to class 4D for the dunces, where you can only do art subject. So that was where I first discovered, then I became the head of the dunces because I started doing well in the class. But if you looked at my result, compared to those in A class and B class, it was way below average. But because I was now the best in the class of the dunces, it encouraged me to pay attention to my schoolwork. And by the end of the year in class 4, when they did the final exam, I was number 8 overall in the entire class 4. So I had the luck that the principal reviewed my performance and gave a correct assessment. But the rest is a mix of history and story. But I never really, after that experience, I never really went backwards. But several times I have had to take certain decisions myself, and it just happened that things worked. For instance, I knew that my boss's practice was based on land when I was with Mr. H.A. Ladner, SAN. And I could anticipate at that time. I used to tell myself that one day they will finish all these land cases in Lagos they are doing. So what else? I decided I wanted to have experience in corporate practice. And I made a move to have that experience in corporate practice and have a balanced practice. But the fact that I had a good background in land litigation in Lagos gave me solid background in litigation, and which became useful in commercial litigation because it was the same court processes and court rules. And then in the university, I had the best result in company law. So at IFE, when I was in IFE, so I had a prize of the Justice Orojo Prize in company law. So when I realized that, well, you must be good in commercial law, so I decided to go and do a master's focusing a lot on comparative company law. And then I also focused, because I had a history in land law and the litigation in land law, I did secured credit transaction, which is actually the master's class in land law. And then I realized that when you put master's class in land law, it was talking about mortgages and debentures, and which was tied to company law, and that there was a link between these issues that made me very strong in commercial law. So so that's the mix of, some of it are effort, some of it are luck, and so it happens that way. Thank you.
Indeed, sir, you proved that preparation, when it meets opportunities, that's what success is actually, not just luck. Thank you very much. I'm sure we are all learning. So another question we have for you, sir, is, you mentioned the drivers for change in legal practice today. So what was your own experience in terms of anticipatory change in the last 38 years of your legal practice? And how did you adapt to it?
Thank you so much. I just gave you one inkling of that I started in land law, but I could see that it was going to change, and I wanted to move to commercial, and I did that. I moved to a law firm that was more into commercial, and then from there I moved into capital market. And then I could anticipate when people started making inquiries about arbitration. I moved towards arbitration and construction law. I went to university, Robert Gordon University, to do a master's again in construction and arbitration law, because I wanted to be sure that if I'm doing arbitration, I'm actually based on knowledge, and then again, we anticipated that there was so much financial problems and distress in the market. So we anticipated, and then I started on insolvency and bankruptcy, which is also one area that I'm still enjoying as at today. So the idea is, you anticipate every 5 years, you anticipate where the market is going to go to, and then you go and retool yourself. I don't just jump into it. Each one of them, I will do a certificate course, do a diploma, do a master's, be sure that I really have the knowledge in that area and prepare before the change occurs, and I'm ready, So that's the sort of way that I have been anticipating it. Now, when you talk about the technology and how we were practicing, when we started practice, you never used to file a brief of argument, no appellant's brief, etc. You just go to court and argue the case. You never need to front load the documents you are going to tender in evidence, So we saw changes occur, when we started practice to when we started front loading. I was there when the practice started of writing briefs at the Court of Appeal. Before, you don't write any brief, you just go there with your record. And a lot of people are missing how to argue an appeal, a proper appeal, in those days, where you will first of all read the entire record, flag it, know where everything is. So when you are arguing without any brief, and you are telling the judges in the Court of Appeal, this is an appeal against the judgment of the High Court of so and so date, which you will find at page X. Then they start flipping to get to that page X. You cannot be struggling to look for the page X. And then you say, when you are talking about the weaknesses, you say the weaknesses are at page this. The PW1 said at page this, and because you flagged it, if they say show us, you just go to look at page this of the record, paragraph this, because you flagged everything. That's how we used to do it. Today, you write the whole brief, everything is there, they tell you come and adopt. So we saw changes going on in the last 38 years. Why am I saying so? Because more changes are going to occur. With the pandemic, with remote working, with virtual hearing, with e-filing, which is coming, the change is going to be dramatic. I can anticipate that because I was there in my friend's office in America. I think that was about 2005 or so, when they started filing electronically their bankruptcy cases. In other words, you sit in your office, you prepare your case, you file it electronically from your office. No clerk goes to the registry to go and file and then pursue bailiff to go and serve. You file it in your office. I can see that happening sooner than later in Nigeria. So there are lots of changes. So it's for the lawyers to anticipate these changes as they are coming. I just made reference to the fact that Supreme Court had the virtual hearing last week. So it's likely that, in fact, more than people are anticipating, the courts may actually drive that change, not the law firms. And the law firms will be the ones lagging behind. So better for the law firms to prepare because the change is coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We have another question here. Said from the survey, many of the lawyers who responded still look towards traditional areas of practice. What is your take on the direction of change today? And where are we likely to be in the near future? How would lawyers fit into the future of legal practice?
Well, I think I mentioned the range of areas that we saw from the survey that people said they are practicing in. If I may summarize it, you can call them, except for the few who spoke about fintech and technology and the rest, they are still very traditional areas of law. When you look at practice of law tomorrow, let me give you an example. I'm anticipating that sooner than later, you may have softwares that are taking decisions, not judges. So let's assume that there's a software that is taking decision. Let's take it, because you have what we call the strong artificial intelligence. You have the weak artificial intelligence. So let's take the weak artificial intelligence, low-level work, right? That a computer you can do a decision tree, and a computer can take that decision, right? And then, the question now is, where is the lawyer in this whole process? So the new skill of a lawyer may be that the lawyer should be able to design a decision tree for a computer. That means that lawyer who will design a decision tree for a computer has to know how to code. But because ultimately he's going to be the best person to do it, not an engineer, because he's applying legal knowledge to get that consistent to take a decision based on data that will be fed into that system. So we are talking about the interplay of technology and law. So the sort of future work may be that work about designing the decision tree. Designing the algorithms that many of these things will use to work. And a lawyer may actually be the best person to do that job. So I didn't see anybody looking in that direction as a possible area that people want to go towards. The technology part, making sure that we are the ones creating the new solutions, and not other people creating those solutions so that we don't have work. So we will have work within the context of the new solutions to the client's challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's just the answer, just to with one of the questions that came in here now. Somebody in anticipating the future was talking about the fourth industrial revolution. And he was trying to see what is the role of lawyers in that fourth industrial revolution. I think you've covered a bit of it already in what you've just said, because I think they're trying to anticipate too. So going back to our chat, how do you get a job if you know nobody? This typical question that most young lawyers ask. How would they get a job if they don't know anybody, especially in the big conference?
Again, you remember I mentioned the encounter between myself and my nephew, and then there was the same issue came where he came to me to say, okay, I should help him to get a posting for NYSC, etc. He wants to work in this particular place and blah blah blah. I said, okay, well, I'll try. So I sent a note to the office, and then they replied and said they don't even accept NYSC at all. They don't accept NYSC, so that was gone. So I said, okay, well, go back to NYSC, let them post you to wherever. So they posted him somewhere. I told him, go there and make your pitch. He went there and he made his pitch, and they accepted him. So, the first thing is, the other day, another person called me. She had worked for quite a number of years, and then she wanted to discuss with me because she was thinking about her career. She wants to go back and get a job. She wanted to do this and that, And then she mentioned that she would like me to sponsor her. And I told her that I'm sorry, that's the problem in Nigeria. Everybody wants to be sponsored. That my own idea of what the issue is that I want to be for you a coach. So take it like it's a football team. Does the coach play the ball? The coach does not play the ball. He coaches you, but you still have to enter the field and perform according to your own ability. So that I can coach you, I can talk to you, give you ideas, but when you enter the field, you have to perform according to your ability. So the idea of somebody saying that he's a nobody and knows nobody does not align with what I have told you, that everybody has their own strength and they have their weaknesses. What has happened is that the person has not discovered his strength and is focusing on his weakness, that he knows nobody. Has not used his strength to apply the few techniques I have mentioned here today of how you build network. People always want other people to help them, but they don't make investment in relationship. They don't swim inside that lake, and yet they want somebody to rescue them. So the idea that you are nobody and you know nobody is untrue. So what I urge you to do is, 1, sit down and do your SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and strength. You will find the strength that you have. Then tell me how you will work on those your strengths. Build relationships. People always wait when they have problem before they go to somebody. They don't anticipate that this person could be useful to me. How do I develop minimum relationship with the person? I don't go there to go ask the person for anything. I just build a relationship. One day that relationship will work. For me, I have done that a lot. I maintain relationships with people that I don't need anything from. But eventually, those relationships turn into huge benefit to me. I don't wait until I have a problem before I develop those relationships. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Another question that I have here for you, sir, in this time that everybody is running away to Canada, the people that we call the Andrews in the 80s, younger people may not know about the Andrew commercials, but typically they understand people are running away to Canada, very highly skilled and educated Nigerians are running away. So for our question, we said most people abroad, Andrews abroad, leave their practice in Nigeria. Why did you go over to Canada and qualify there as a lawyer after almost 30 years of successful practice in Nigeria, yet keeping the practice going in Nigeria? How did you do that?
Thank you very much. You see, what happened was that as the practice was growing, I was getting more and more involved with international work. I was dealing with the top law firms around the world. I started feeling a certain level of inadequacy or lack of knowledge of certain things. Most of the principles in international law are based on English law, but there are some that are based on European law, and then there are some that are based on international conventions and norms that differ a little bit from English law. I also discovered that the laws, English law wise being quite dominant, did not reflect the entire scope of international law. And that a lot of times you have to have really strong comparative knowledge, to be able to advise your client. And then there were terms that keep coming up and concepts that I didn't fully understand. So I understood that there was if you go back to when I spoke about the drivers for change that IBA identified, that there was a mismatch, a skill mismatch was occurring at that time between me and the needs of my client. I realized that I wanted to be in a position where I will know everything the lawyer that is on the other side I'm negotiating with knows, and yet I'll be acting for my client in Nigeria. So I thought about the best way to fill up that gap, and I thought that being qualified in a jurisdiction that is somehow similar to the Nigerian jurisdiction, and at the same time gives exposure to international knowledge, was going to do it. So when I came over, I never came over with the intention of abandoning the practice in Nigeria. I came over with the intention of enhancing the practice in Nigeria. And in fact, after the first 2 years, and I went for feedback from one of my clients, they said, Tony, we prefer it when you are over there. I said, why? They said, first, the speed with which you respond is excellent, and we see you give more time to the job. And then I said, is that all? They said, no. They said, all your lawyers, their level of performance have gone up, and you've dragged them up because of the level of skill that you are bringing and knowledge you are bringing from abroad. So at the end of the day, it's always about the client, and every lawyer has to think about, because as the change is occurring, there will be a mismatch that occurs between the skills that you have and the needs of your client. So you must always develop your own strategy of how you will fill that gap and ensure that you continue to give the same quality of service or even better for your client. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, and I want you to know that I have my own question for the audience. One question I would like to put up in the pool. The last question, there are many questions, but I want the last question because I would really love to get a feedback. The one that says, arrange in order of importance for achieving an enviable personal brand. I want that question to be answered by the audience. Then I can respond to it. Can you put up that question now, please? Yes. So I would like us to answer this question. Given everything we have discussed today, I would really appreciate an answer to this question. Arrange in order of importance for achieving an enviable personal brand. Thank you. I will leave it for 1 minute. Thank you. About 200 people have answered so far. Let's see whether we can get to 400 and I stop. Although I think this is quite representative enough. Okay, it's not changing, so I will stop it now because it's still the same thing. Yeah, I'll end the poll. Okay, so this is the result. Can you see the result?
Yes, I can see it.
Yes. So from the result, 54% of the respondents said that knowledge is the most important. 27% said network, and 19% said experience. Thank you so much. Let me hear what my thoughts are on this. My thinking is that perhaps the network is more important. You know, and that's the issue, because if you remember, you already have the basic knowledge. You are already prepared. You already have the license to represent, right? You have been trained as a lawyer. Most of the issues you asked me to address have to do with how do you build a career in law. You asked me, I should address the issue, how do you build a career in law? You asked me, how do you choose an area of specialization? You asked me, how do you build a firm? And you asked me, how do you retain your clientele? The most important thing in all those things is network. Somebody said, I don't know anybody, I want to get a job. What will the knowledge do there? It's network. So you see, you have to, in my view, you have to understand that the knowledge will come. You will always have a strategy to acquire the knowledge. It's not the knowledge that is the issue. It's that you have to first get the job to even apply the current knowledge you have. Then you have money to invest to acquire more knowledge, but you need to get the job. People have to know. And it's the network that is the most important thing. So go back and ask yourself, are you sitting down in your house and expecting that job will be falling from heaven and then you have knowledge? Or are you going out there to engage, have the opportunity with your community to show that knowledge and then generate the work, build the clientele, and sustain the clientele? So that's how I want to leave that issue, challenging you to go and review the answers you have given. 54% of the people said it's knowledge. Only 27% said it is network. And I'm telling you that the most important is network. You need to go and work on your network. It requires some sacrifice. I have so many lawyers who will say they don't want to go to church because they want me to do the job free. To come and be member of committee and it's free. I don't want to go to mosque because they want me to do it free. But I ask you the question, all those people who are seeing you every day in the mosque, how do they know you can write a good minute? How do they know that your reasoning faculty is very advanced? Except they taste it. Unfortunately, the only way they can taste it is through the voluntary work you will do first. And then they say, oh, that guy is smart. When they have a problem in the office, don't worry, I know one smart lawyer. So network is the most important to me. Thank you. Mary.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question I have is, from your experience, which are the greatest threats to legal practice? Is it the people, technology, or regulation?
Mary, this one is another tough one. Oh. I think all of them, the threat can come from anywhere. It could come from regulation. It could come from technology. Technology can wipe us out and we don't know what we are doing again. But the most important is probably the people, because it's the people that will develop the regulation. It's also the people that will develop the technology. So to me, it's people. People is the greatest threat. So the person you are seeing, I gave you the example of Ganifa, who one person made a difference in democratizing knowledge among the circulation of knowledge within the law practice, right? So one person can make a difference. One person, each one of us here can make a difference. All you need to do is focus on the issues we've spoken about. Identify the client need, identify the cost issues, identify the areas the costs are going towards, create the solution yourself, and you will be shocked what impact you can make. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have quite a lot of questions coming into the question plug in there. So you have a lot of questions, but I guess at some point we have to cut off. So let me ask this one again. You have built a reputation in litigation, capital market, insolvency, and arbitration, among others. How did you choose your areas of specialization? What step did you take to actualize them?
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. I think I've sort of like answered it. First of all, I allowed, in many ways, I allowed the process to be as natural as possible, as I have said. But I used to anticipate it, and then I prepare before it occurs, right? So that's how it went, and I think I described it that I have a foundation in land law and litigation, and then I moved on to corporate. Within corporate, I moved on to capital market. I actually entered capital market through litigation as well, but then ended up with transactions. And then from there to arbitration, construction law, oil and gas, and now insolvency, bankruptcy, restructuring, and things like that. In fact, part of what I did when I saw the challenges, when I saw the mesh challenge of trying to manage, when I go for meetings, and then I found that we're dealing with a balance sheet, financial statement, and then I'm sitting across the table with accountants, and they are using jargons, the language that I didn't understand. Even if they didn't make sense to me, I could not criticize them. I could not make my argument. I could not represent my client effectively. I went to do an MBA. I needed to understand the terminologies. I needed to understand the issues. I needed to understand the balance sheet. I needed to be able to interpret a financial statement. I went and did an MBA, and that gave huge impact, because when I'm talking with my clients, at times when I'm giving them advice, I don't even know whether it's law I'm talking or business strategy or strategic management, or group dynamics. These are all the things that I learned in my MBA. But you find that even in simple negotiation within the context of a litigation, all those skills come in. If you don't understand the organizations, you don't know the stakeholders, you don't know how to deal with them, you can't even effectively negotiate a settlement. So there are so many skills that you need today to be a lawyer. It was tough. It was not easy, to be going to school, trying to always acquire one knowledge or the other as you're anticipating change, but that's the route I decided to take, because I decided that the route I would take was that of expertise, and it worked, So I had to go and do an MBA just to be able to deal with financial matters, and that makes me very comfortable when I'm dealing with, say, business restructuring, business rescue, and things like that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sir, thank you very much. We have more questions for you. So this participant is asking that after staying out of practice for years, can one still be able to succeed in practice despite aging factor? What is the best way to re-engage?
Well, thank you so much. All I can tell you is that it's your will. It's your If you have the will, it can always work. Um, I met this senior QC in England. He had he had practiced as a journalist for about 25 years, and then decided to go back and become a lawyer. And then he became a lawyer, and then about 15 years later, he was a QC in England. So, so if somebody could do that, start law completely at an old age and still make it to becoming a QC, then anything is possible. It's just that you have to apply yourself. Set your personal, make your personal, write your personal statement, set your vision, your mission, your objective, have a strategy to follow through, right? Be committed to it. Many people just expect the manners to be falling from heaven. That's always what I find. So, but if you are committed to it, the luck comes along as you are going and pursuing that strategy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. This question, I actually tried to combine two questions because they are quite related. So this person is asking, how much experience, in your opinion, sir, is asked before setting up a personal law firm? So he's asking, how long does a lawyer need to pay his dues? And what was your experience in this regard?
Thank you so much. That's a very good question. When I was talking about how you build your practice and your career, and I spoke about networking, one of the items I put there was pupillage. Having the right pupillage is critical to success. I tell you why. Because, and I'll give you, I use myself as an example because I had pupillage of about 6 years. I worked with Mr. H.A. Ladner for 6 years. What does that do for you when you practice? I realized that the day I left Mr. Ladner's office, right, filing a claim in court, there couldn't be a mistake. Because I've done it over and over under his supervision and the supervision of other lawyers that I worked with, like Jimoh Lasisi and the rest. So, there could not be a mistake. My client's job was not a guinea pig. I was not using my client for guinea pig because I have been prepared. So that's what tutelage does for you. It was the foundation was strong, and the only thing I then did was how to build on that foundation, how to expand it, how to create new opportunities, etc. I recall very well that I have a good friend who met me one day in court, and he called me in Ibushere. He called me to we were in the corridor. He called me upstairs. He called me and we went to the side. He pointed at the car park and said, "Tony, that's my car, Mazda 929. And he asked me, he said, and then I was driving a Beetle. He said, "Are you still with Mr. Ladner?" I said, "I'm still there, my brother." He said he has never worked for anybody. From the youth service, he started his own, and he showed me the car again. So I congratulated him and left. Anyway, fast forward, by the time I left Ladner, by the time I left R.I. Kuku & Co. and set up on my own, 6 months after I set up on my own, they took a brief from him and briefed me to lead him in the matter. And he was happy for me to lead him in the matter because he knew that I had more knowledge to lead him in that matter, and I led him in the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Like they say, you don't buy experience in the market. Thank you so much. Another question that came in, I think we should look at this, even though our time is running out. He said, what can a junior lawyer do where the principal is in chamber, delegates only support roles to the junior in the chamber, and prefers to do the tasks in the firm? How can such junior lawyer learn? So he's complaining about not getting proper roles in the firm.
Yeah, thank you. That question is a very good question, and it engages two aspects of the discussion that we have had today. The first aspect is the boss trying to it challenges the boss to try to create a sustainable environment, and if they follow the guides that I've mentioned, to make sure there's job satisfaction, to make sure that there's challenging job, to have compensation structure that can keep the juniors with them, to have a strong culture, etc., then that senior is going to build a sustainable law firm. We are trying to build big institutions. It is better to have 2% of a very huge institution than to have 100% of a tiny little small office. When I was growing up, there were lawyers I saw who had Mercedes-Benz V-Boot, and they had the room and parlor law firm. They were satisfied to just go to NBA conference. Life was good. I saw when I started, I still saw these people, they couldn't change the V-boot. They couldn't change the V-boot. They drove the V-boot for 15 years. They couldn't change it. They didn't invest in their practice. So for the seniors, what this question is saying, they need to apply some of what I have said to create the structure to keep those juniors. Now, let me take the other side. It is that this question engages the junior. For the junior, I have said in in the overview that I did, I said what you need to do is understand the vision of your firm where you are. So, which means understand that you're a senior, what his vision is, etc. 2, acquire the right skills to be relevant within the firm. Now, I ask you the question, so why is he not giving it to you? You know, it could be that because he doesn't have the confidence in your ability, possibly, right? It's possible. And I said the third issue that I mentioned is be strategic. Be strategic, right? I will tell you that by the time I left Mr. Ladner's office, I used to also take briefs to him because I was not a senior advocate, of course. So, and there were cases we got where they would say they require senior advocate. I would take the brief to my boss, my previous boss, and then he will say, Tony, go and prepare the paper. I will prepare the papers. When I come back to him, he will say, where should I sign? I will show him where he will sign. He will sign. He will not look at it. You say, Tony, you prepared it. I say, yes, sir. Say, okay, where should I sign? He will sign. He had confidence in me that if I prepared the papers, he didn't need to look at it. So the question I ask the junior now is, if your senior says you sees a paper you prepared, would he sign it without looking at it? So you see that there are two sides to this coin. And both parties have to work hard to make sure that we are creating sustainable law firms. We are growing the law firms. You can never really be big alone. That is one thing that is clear. And when you look at it with the globalization I've mentioned, with these big law firms coming, what we are trying to achieve now is to see a Nigerian law firm that can compete internationally, right? And that means that you'll be looking at, in the medium term, to have Nigerian law firms that have like 500 lawyers, right? Maybe 100 of them as partners. And then, you begin to have a global footprint. They would have work around the world. They can send Nigerian lawyers to be there. And even if you look at the current position, unfortunately, Nigerian law firms have not even gone with Nigerian businesses that are going regional. So let's take banks, for instance, Dangote, banks, and others who are having branches all over Africa. Which law firm has said on the back of Nigerian law firms going abroad that they needed to set up office in South Africa, to set up in Kenya, to set up in other countries. These people are using European-based law firms in those countries. They are not really using mostly local law firms. So we have a long way to go to be able to compete globally. And it cannot be done by one individual. You will burn out. You need critical mass. So we need to encourage the building of big partnerships in Nigeria.
Thank you very much, sir. Just as a follow-up to that, your last statement, one of the questions we have here says that how can legal firms work together to change the external factors in the environment? Is this achievable since most firms see each other as competitors?
Thank you so much. Well, I mean, this is a very important question as well, because, as I've said, that there are other factors that would influence even your performance. So like regulation, for instance, could influence performance. So those external factors, we need to come together. That's where you talk about reform of the legal profession, and why MBA needs to drive that process, to drive the reform. And part of what we try to do with the reform, the agenda of the MBA, is to create an independent institution that is not run by practicing lawyers, to be the one that will regulate, not practicing lawyers and not judges running the process, to be the ones that will regulate the profession and therefore manage some of these issues that you are talking about, of people being afraid of each other, because we have an independent institution. We have seen it succeed in other parts of the economy. You can see what happened with independent regulation for telecommunication and what it has done with the penetration of telephones in Nigeria. So it can happen with our profession, and when we have that and we can have robust competition in Nigeria, we can actually dominate Africa and hopefully have a footprint or in legal practice in the world. And that is what we should be looking at really in terms of the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. The questions are just flowing in, and I think at some point we have to shut down. I'm sorry for those sending their questions. We probably won't be able to answer all of them. We'll try to see if we could send answers, but that's not the promise yet. But we'll try to work on that from MBA end. And so I'll just take two more questions before I invite Tobina to come and close this up. So somebody is asking, sir, what are the things you would have done differently if you had to go back to your young self?
Well, it's another very difficult question in terms of what I would have done differently. But I think, in terms of the regrets that I have and what I would have done differently, some of them are things I didn't have control over. And one is, I think I should have created my partnership earlier. The partnership, I think it should have been earlier, but and I missed an opportunity because I think because I had a bad experience with the first partnership I got into, I became too cautious. I had another opportunity that would have, I think, created one of the biggest law firms in Nigeria, but I missed it because I was too conscious of the fact that I just had a failed partnership, so that's one of my major regrets. But eventually, after a couple of years, I got over it, and then we created the current partnership. So I thank God for that. Yeah.
Okay, sir. So the final question I would like to put forward is, one of the participants would like to know if you have a mentorship hub that young practitioners can plug into.
Well, thank you for that. I think we can work on that. That's what I would say. I'm always available. I try. It's tough for me, but I'm electronically available. Otherwise, we can work on that. Let me put it that way. I would love to share knowledge, encourage people, give tips. So. I would like to work with that particular respondent. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. So, Mr. Tubina, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Mary. Before I say thank you to Chief, I'll just say that there are way too many takeaways for me today. Just a reminder that what we are taught to do and what we are trained to do is to represent people. I think that's a big one. Taking control of our own affairs by creating our own pipeline. And I think Chief says something like the pipeline never goes dry if you engage with the source. And I think it's important that we constantly engage with the source, learning points. And it's relevant at all times to be strategic in what we do and to continue to have a self-reflection, assessment, and evaluation, and to ask ourselves where we are at every material point in time. So fantastic always to listen to Chief. Today has been an exciting experience. We're happy at our end at the Institute with the number of participants we had today. So oftentimes I think we forget that mentorship and listening at the foot of the masters is something that over time many traditional societies have relied on in their development. So we are, as the Nigerian Bar Association, which Chief, of course, is a leading member of, very proud of Chief. We are happy that you always answer when we call you. You are in many ways a mentor and a role model to me and to many others. And we thank you especially for your consistent and constant engagement with Nigerian Bar Association and the level of evolutionary thought that you bring to the table all the time. The Institute has, in the last couple of months, had about 20 training sessions, but this is actually the first one that has focused on personal development and career type training. And it is not for nothing that we invited Chief Anthony Idigbe to be our first mentor. Learned Senior Advocate, thank you very much. We're also very grateful to the law firm of Punuka for helping put this together and sponsoring today's event. Thank you very much, everyone, for being part of this session. And I hope you will join us next time when we call on you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah.